At 5 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock, welcoming you to The Big Story. As you heard, courtesy of Sheldon's Auto Parts Limited, the little giant in the business. Jamaica's Ministry of Health and Wellness received approximately 500 calls to its mental health and suicide prevention helpline in September alone, providing 24/7 free and confidential support to individuals in distress. The helpline offers counseling, referrals, and intervention for mental health crises, including suicidal intent or attempts. Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton highlighted the ministry's efforts to sensitize the health team for early diagnosis and treatment of mental health issues. This morning we want to focus on mental health in Jamaica, and we're joined once again by Associate Clinical Psychologist and founder of Tea House Therapy Limited, Sonia Wynter, who is my guest at this time. Good morning and welcome, Ms. Wynter. How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks, Richie B. Good morning to you as well.
Thank you so much for being here with us. How do you assess what is going on right now? Are we at a crisis proportions from your perspective, Sonia?
Well, Richie, one life lost to suicide is a crisis. Certainly one preventable life lost to suicide is a crisis. In the last, perhaps month, there have been a number of suicides that have been described and brought to the public knowledge through the media, from what I understand from the statistics, there has been an uptick over the last month or two. However, suicide in Jamaica has always been a concern worldwide, but it has always been a concern for sure. I think that it happens that these 4 or 5 suicides in the last month have just coincided, as it were, and also ironically coincided with the month of mental health, suicide awareness, which was last month, yes. September, But yes, whether we're at a crisis or not, I would just say we're certainly at an unfortunate state where we are losing lives to suicide, which can, and some of which, not all, some of which can be prevented.
Mm-hmm. Have you sort of narrowed it down in terms of what might be some of the main contributing factors that might have resulted in this increase that we have seen in suspected suicide cases in Jamaica?
Sure. From what I understand, the studies have shown that in countries like Jamaica, and certainly in Jamaica, the most common triggers would be untreated mental health disorders, such as depression and anxiety, combine that with issues such as unresolved trauma, grief, and other sort of difficult life situations that people go through, relationship breakups and so on. And I think because, getting help is still either not accessible or is still stigmatized, then, these deaths there's some deaths that can be preventable, but because there's no access to help, people lose their lives.
Mm-hmm. In your experience, Ms. Wynter, are Jamaicans generally open to seeking professional help for their depression and or mental health challenges, or is there sort of a stigma attached to it?
Yes, there is a stigma, and unfortunately, more people are silent about their mental health conditions than people who actually access help. The good thing, though, Richie B., is that programs such as yours, there's huge public awareness programs. And so I'm seeing that attitude towards getting help changing dramatically. These conversations are happening more in communities, in churches. I've been a speaker so many times at churches, in community health programs, in the corporate world, so that these conversations, and they're making a difference. Richie B. And so the attitude towards mental health care is changing, even though the stigma remains. There's a shift that I want to celebrate because it's something we can build on, you know.
Can you highlight some of the warning signs that family members, friends, or colleagues should sort of look out for if someone should be, maybe considering suicide?
Okay, so the main ones that we've been told about is a dramatic change in behavior. So when, somebody who is typically gregarious or sociable has withdrawn, so they're withdrawing, you're not seeing them, they're uncomfortable socializing, they're isolating themselves. If you're noticing them, their language changing, so they're talking about, they just feel hopeless. What's the point in life? Statements such as, "Boy, I wish I didn't wake up this morning," or statements that are said which suggest this person is approaching hopelessness, because hopelessness is almost like the open door into suicidal ideations, as we call them, So noticing a change in their languaging. Sometimes, too, you're noticing giving away things, giving away possessions, that sort of a thing. Also, what is more recently is being seen as a red flag is where someone who's going through a depression, so that they have been having difficulty, emotional difficulties, and then suddenly they're very relieved. There's this kind of sense of joy, almost euphoria. Sometimes that's a red flag as well, because people who eventually die by suicide, they're really suffering tremendous mental anguish. And once they make up their mind to use suicide as a way of escaping that anguish, that can for a moment bring a lot of relief, ironically, so you can use that as a red flag,
yes.
As to what's potentially happening in their life.
Yes, very helpful information you're sharing with us this morning, and we really thank you. In terms of accessibility of mental health services in Jamaica right now, do you think we're at a point where we need to have big improvements in that regard, and what might you recommend, to help make it more available to the average person?
Indeed. Okay. There is inadequate access to mental health services. So let's start there. But again, the programs such as yours and other programs, other endeavors are changing that, in terms of making mental health accessible. So I'll give you an idea of what's available right now. So, for example, a number of hospitals across the island, they have mental health clinics, and people actually go. I have been to really small clinics. I've been to Balaclava, where they have a clinic, and visited where they have a running clinic, for example. So the hospital network across the island does provide mental health services, and they're used, number one. Corporate Jamaica also are providing what we call employee assistance programs for their employees and their families, where the entity pays for mental health services for their employees and their families, There are a number of hotlines as well. The Ministry of Health has a number of hotlines, and there are other hotlines that are provided that work across the island that does provide mental health care as well. I know also that there are a number of churches that sometimes have a visiting psychologist at a certain day of the week, for example, that provides that care. So there is care available. And then, of course, there are more and more psychologists. There's a plethora of psychologists across the island and in many different communities. But that is not to say that meets the need by any means. You know what I mean? Also in schools, by the way, more and more psychologists are going into schools. They're being invited in by guidance counselors and so on to, just give an awareness, because, the first step is to create a kind of a cultural shift in terms of how we perceive getting mental health care, to break the stigma, so that more people can avail themselves of the services that are already available. But I think it's building on what we already have, more facility. Oh, and one last thing too,
yes.
The insurance companies, as a part of I've noticed a part of number of policies, you can get coverage. Some coverage is not a lot, but some coverage for mental health services. That is certainly one area where the access can be expanded, to the extent that more policies offer that coverage and a more meaningful coverage, because at the moment the coverage on most policies is not significant at all, And also I do want to talk about, mental health in that the programs that the Ministry of Health has, they have the Family and Child Protection Services Agency. They do offer, mental health services. They have a number of psychologists on their team that support individuals who come into the court system, for example, because of trauma or abuse or that sort of a thing, and their mental health is challenged. They do have access to some facilities. So it's building on the expertise, building on the manpower of these different arms of service that are available across the island.
Mm-hmm. We really want to highlight the role of persons like yourself as a psychologist and the psychiatrist and the counselors out there who have in many instances volunteered their services to help persons. Mm-hmm. We really want to highlight their work and their worth and commend them and implore them to keep on keeping on. For those who might be interested in helpline numbers, we have a few that I'm going to share with you. There's 888-639-5433. There's 876-439-5199. And there's also 3776. That's 888-723-3776. Now, Ms. Wynter, in closing, if someone out there is listening right now who is struggling with thoughts of self-harm, or in case you know someone who is struggling with those thoughts, what immediate steps should they take?
Mm-hmm. If they can reach out to the helpline, that's the easiest thing to reach out to, number one. Also, it's very important, if you know someone or you have a loved one who you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, try as best as you can to get them to a hospital as quickly as possible. The accident and emergency departments can help and can offer immediate help, And so I would say get professional help as quickly as you can, either through hotlines, or through hospitals, and that's a first step. That's the most important step for people who are alone and struggling with suicidal thoughts. Please know that even though you feel physically alone, there's a community out there waiting to support you. You aren't alone at all. There are many people trained who can help get you through what feels like a wave of hopelessness and can really help you to stand again, and make meaning in your life.
All right. Sonia Wynter, Associate Clinical Psychologist and founder of Tea House Therapy Limited. Thank you so much for sharing time with us this morning and those wonderful thoughts as well and useful information. Have a wonderful day, Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishabh. Take good care. Bye-bye now.
You too. Bye-bye. That was, of course, The Big Story.
Edition of The Big Story. Conversations that shape our nation and the world. Proudly sponsored by Sheldon's Auto Parts Limited. Shops 2 to 5, Meal Complex, 1 Malines Road, Kingston 10. Sheldon's, the little giant in the business.